Well, today is a special day because we are here at Jess Bregoli Sparling's homestead where she creates all of her beautiful artwork. And we're also here to discuss how Seaport Art Walk came to be. It's been 10 years and we're celebrating the 10th anniversary. And I'm so happy that we get to show you some of Jess's work today. So thank you so much for letting us come in and get a behind the scenes view of how you create your artwork. Can you tell me a little bit about your history as an artist?
Yes. Well, I came from a family of artists and musicians, so art has always been in my bones. I grew up going to art museums and galleries and openings, and so I've always just had it, in me. And then when I lived in Georgia on a farm, I was like, I really want to make giant, large steel sculpture pieces for like everybody in Georgia, just like big outdoor pieces. And so when I moved back, I decided to pick up where I left off with my college education at the UMass Dartmouth. I was there for a few years before I moved. And so I picked it back up and I went in for sculpture, specifically steel metal fabrication. And I graduated in 2015. And from there, I've done like some mixed media stuff, but I really do prefer steel over everything. And now that I finally have this space, I can weld here, and I got a welder and all that kind of stuff. So now I can actually do what I really like to do, which is steel metal fabrication.
And that is what you are creating for Seaport Art Walk this year.
Yeah, so this year I am doing 5 steel flowers, and they are about 6 feet tall. So they're all made out of steel and paint, nothing else.
And this is temporary public art, so it is from July through October each year. Sometimes, we do have artists who keep their artwork up for a little bit longer. One of those is Donna Dodson, who is a featured artist this year. I would like you to just talk briefly about the piece that has stayed up. I believe it is from 2015.
Yep, that piece is called Moby Dick. It is out of the same material that Secret Cinderella is made out of, which is basically like a styrofoam with like a resin around it, paint, and cement. Yep, that one's a lot more cement too. So it's really, really durable, and it hasn't really weathered at all. She came down a few years ago and like gave another like little smooth coating on top of it, a little sealant on it. But it's really held its game up, and with some of the artwork that we've kept up, it's just a lot of it has to do with the durability, also just where it's located. Like if it's not in the way of other things going on, then most of the times it can stay if it can withstand hurricanes and snowstorms and all the beautiful weather we have, and the super, super high winds down at the waterfront too. So not everything can stay up. Some of Eric Lintela's pieces have stayed up in the past too, but those are made out of resin as well. They're super, super solid, not going anywhere, bolted to the ground.
I'm glad you mentioned Eric Lintela because he has been a huge advocate of this project since the very beginning. You tell me.
Yeah, so Eric was one of my professors when I was in college at UMass Dartmouth. And I had the idea, and I wasn't sure if I should do it, if I was just being too ambitious, and maybe it would just be an idea, and sometimes ideas don't really go anywhere. And I talked to him about it, and he just was like, just pushed me to actually do it, and was like, yeah, I'd like talk to the department heads, and let's get everybody involved. And so the first 2 years was students, just basically my peers. Then it just kind of kept growing. I had grad students and alumni and faculty have all been in the show, and artists now from like New York and Connecticut, Western Mass, just all around. I think we have had some Mainers in there too.
So I would love for you to talk me through like how you create one of the flowers. What's the process? What's the equipment you use? I have no idea how you create what you create. It just turns out amazing. So yeah, can you do that for me?
Yeah. I start off with the sketch that I have, and then I use a really big roll of paper. This year I just used some Tyvek that you wrap houses with. And I draw it out, and then I cut all the pieces out. I put it on the steel, which I get 4x8 sheets that are 1/8 inch thick. And I take like soapstone, or this time I used a crayon because that's what I had laying around. And then I just trace all the images onto it, and I'll put them as close together as possible so I have less cuts. And I have a plasma cutter, which is a great little one. It has the air compressor inside of it, so I don't have to have a whole separate unit, and it's actually really lightweight. I can just pick it up and bring it wherever. So once I have the image traced out on the steel, I just use the plasma cutter, cut it out, and then I weld everything together. I have an arc welder. And after it's all welded together, I clean it up with just a grinding disc, let it cool off, and then I paint it. This year I use spray paint. So there is a front and a back to these. So the back part is the section that I have facing me. So I weld on the back line, and you can tell the back from where the slag is from the plasma cutter. It'll be like raised and like bumpy. So that is the back side. So you weld the back side to the back side. So when you flip it over, it's more of a finished side, and it requires less grinding at that point. They call this like running bead, or the motion that you do when you use an arc welder is basically just like little crescent moons, like over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And with that, you're welding this piece of metal is melting with the metal that's in my hand is the filler between the two metals, and it's so hot that it melts both the metals, and all three metals become one metal.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, so don't touch it, it's really hot.
Yeah.
I put water on it.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. My name is Zane Cox. I am the Senior Fellow for Arts-Based Initiatives and Entrepreneurship at the New Bedford Economic Development Council and New Bedford Creative. Try saying that 5 times fast. And I am here to proudly welcome you all to the official 2023 Seaport Art Walk opening and walking tour. All right, thank you very much. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce a few people. Jessica Bregoli, who is the founder and curator of Seaport Art Walk. Great to have her here. And along with all of our fantastic artists who are joining us tonight right in front of me, let's give them a big round of applause. And standing next to me tonight is Margot Saulnier. She is the creative strategist for New Bedford Creative. Margot, did you want to say a few words?
Thank you all for coming tonight. I so appreciate you. I appreciate our artists here in New Bedford. And we are trying to do something crazy. We are taping a television show at the same time that we're giving the tour tonight. So I want to introduce you to Dana DeBarros from New Bedford Cable Network. He is an award-winning videographer, producer, and editor and cinematographer, all-around Renaissance man. He is also an artist. Thank you, Dana. And now I'm turning it back to Zane.
Just a brief overview, New Bedford's annual Seaport Art Walk was founded in 2013, 10 whole years ago, by artist Jessica Bregoli, and it is New Bedford's very first large format outdoor public art installation. This year, 2023, we are celebrating Seaport Art Walk's 10th anniversary. To mark this very special anniversary, artists this year were invited to submit proposals for both new and pre-existing artwork that celebrates this milestone year for the Seaport Art Walk, comments on our city's ever-changing artistic and cultural landscape, or commemorates the generations of creatives that have called New Bedford home. Artists were also encouraged to take inspiration from previous themes of the past 10 years of the Seaport Art Walk. Jess, did you want to say a few words?
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I never expected this to become what it is. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces. We have some returning artists, some new artists. I see some other artists that have been in the shows in the past years out here. It's absolutely amazing, and thank you so much, and enjoy the tour.
Yay! All right, lead us off.
Some of you might recognize this piece. It originally appeared in the 2016 Seaport Art Walk, and it's ruffling some feathers again this year. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to the creator, Donna Dodson.
Thank you, Zane. Yeah, so this sculpture, I put it here in 2016. It caused a bit of a controversy in New Bedford, which Jess embraced, and I certainly embraced. And yeah, basically I'm primarily a wood carver, typically carve wood, but when I work outside, I work with styrofoam and cement. So it's a very different material, obviously, for the outdoors. So I had a small sculpture that was like Seagull Cinderella. The idea was Cinderella was like a common woman or a girl, and so I thought of the seabird, the seagull, and so it's a seagull-headed, kind of avatar of the American princess Cinderella. And so that's kind of where it started. Obviously making it much larger than life, for public art, since everything, you put it outside and it looks tiny. So it's light, so I don't need a crane to move it. So I can kind of tip it into a trailer, drive it, tip it back out. So again, it's logistics, which I think you have to solve when you do large outdoor work. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
My piece is actually based on the inspiration of creating the art walk. Before it was a Seaport Art Walk, it didn't have a real name, and then it became the Seaport Art Walk. So anyways, so when I was younger, I used to come down here with Emily Johns, and we would landscape all these garden beds, and I moved away, I came back, and I started helping her again out here. And at that time, I was back at UMass Dartmouth in the sculpture department. And one day we were over here, and she's like, wouldn't it be so nice to see some artwork in these beds? And the light bulb just went off. And I was like, that is an amazing idea. I've always wanted to do large outdoor steel sculpture pieces, public art for people to enjoy. I created this piece as Emily's Bouquet, and so they're made out of steel. And this section in particular is where I wanted it because she always called this spot her serendipity garden. So we could really never get anything to grow here. I think there used to be an old tree here, and that's why we really couldn't get anything to grow. So I decided that making some steel flowers and just putting them in this place is the perfect top to our serendipity garden. And I don't know. I hope everybody really likes it.
My name is Eric Lintola, and the subject I sort of honed in on was the beginning of New Bedford, the Wampanoag tribe, and pretty much before the white settlers came. So that's where this piece originally is inspired from. The title is Memories Carried on a Wing, Homage to the Wampanoag Nation. The Wampanoag Nation have undergone a very difficult history after assisting pilgrims in the early 1600s. There once were 67 district tribal communities. Today, only 6 remain. The influence of the Wampanoag Nation can still be felt throughout southeastern Massachusetts. Environmental practices and values that were taught to the settlers long ago still help to inform us today. The large front figure represents Chief Massasoit of the Wampanoag tribe at a time when the Pilgrims first landed in Massachusetts. The large circular feathered headpiece is taken from an early undated engraving of Chief Massasoit. The figure is flanked with painted images of handprints representing those that came before. A timeline represented by rectangular shapes along 2 parallel curving lines and 2 zigzag designs on the figure were taken from the Native American clamshell belts. The backside of the sculpture is represented by a series of 6 of the remaining tribes, 6 small wings rising and a singular large wing emerging from the dark interior of the cylindrical form, conveying a more hopeful and bright future with the many stories and memories of the Wampanoag Nation. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. My name's Mandy. This is my piece called Secret City Whale Pod. The original intent of the project was to go on these walls behind here, but there were some ramps built in the meantime, so we pivoted and did it on the Jersey barriers as a happy medium. So the inspiration behind these is they're all made up of words. The words are all about New Bedford. Some of the answers were collected last summer. I did live painting at 5 different events and prompted the public to answer the question, what do you love about New Bedford, via whiteboard. And via sticky note, people answered and collected some wonderful things about New Bedford, people's favorite places, memories. So they all went directly into the paintings.
So Vibrant Passage is a portal that draws our awareness to this brief, unique moment of time between the past and the future. I'm very interested in the forces that shape our lives and our bodies that tend to be invisible. I think a lot about time, so that's one of my thoughts here. I also think a lot about currents of water, currents of wind. You can see the shape of the spirals here being drawn from currents. And the idea of turbulence is something that we can't usually see, but it does shape so much of our lives as people, as animals. I think about the movements of electrons and protons in our smallest parts. I think about the way we're shaped by DNA, by layers of time and history, and how many forces we're subject to that we don't tend to think of. The reason this matters is because ultimately we can kind of have a mechanistic understanding of, we could diagram every part of our bodies and our lives, and that feels so at odds with the experience of living and what it is to be alive and creatures who feel joy and sorrow and pain and love. And so I really like to explore the duality between these 2 ways of seeing the world. So I'm very interested in working with light. I try to create my sculptures in such a way that light is invited to be part of the process. So I'm so glad that we're here when there's actually light coming through the piece. It dramatically changes it. I don't know if you've seen it when, like this part is so lit up, and every single moment the sculpture is very different because when the light's above it, it glows. When the sun goes behind a cloud, the light changes. It's different in the morning and in the evening. And so that's another invitation to pay attention to what we're doing right now. Yeah, thank you.
everyone. My name is Lindsay Misch, and I'm the Executive Director of Massachusetts Design Art Technology Institute, DATMA, and we present public art in the South Coast. So I'd like to invite two of the artists from New Bedford to come up and talk about their work. The first being Pam Haas, who's been making work in the city for, I think, a few decades, and then Patrick Moore will speak about this exhibition after that.
You know, I was raised in a family of 10 children, and I'm the youngest. And when my parents passed away, you know, we lost our homestead. And, you know, this is the theme of shelter. And the way for me to process that was through old photographs that I hadn't seen in 50 years. You know, I was in my 60s, and I saw pictures of myself, you know, in first grade and third grade. You know, I forgot what outfits I wore and what I looked like. I Xeroxed the photos, the heads, and then in my studio, right on the wall, I painted these little girls to recreate them. And it made me think about, you know, being young and being happy as a little girl on the farm in Rockland. On the other side is the farm with the animals, and it was a tribute to my homestead.
I'm a local artist. I live in New Bedford. I've been here for about 10 years. But I was a student at UMass Dartmouth in the 90s and left the area only to return about 10 years ago, and was really surprised and inspired to see how much the city had changed in a positive way, especially in the arts. So this is a piece of mine. It's acrylic on canvas. It's a little larger than this, and I painted it at Hat Street Studios, where I have a studio in New Bedford. And so I was actually really honored to be chosen to have one of my pieces featured in this exhibition. This is one of my pieces, and there are also a couple additional pieces at the top of the stairs going on to the C Streak, and I also have a piece up there.
Off to the next. Follow Zane.
I'm going to be doing this one not because it's mine, but because the artist who created this unfortunately is not here tonight. He lives out in Connecticut, so it's a bit of a drive. But the title of this piece is Solidarity. It's made out of black granite, and it was made by artist R. Douglas Rice back in 2020. So here's what Doug has to say about solidarity. After the death of George Floyd in the spring of 2020, millions of people worldwide came together to protest his killing at the hands of police officers. Demonstrations all over the country demanded that the violence and killing of African Americans stop, and that police be held accountable for their actions. In my small town of Stonington, Connecticut, we attended weekly demonstrations in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. At the end of June 2020, a black woman named Crystal Caldwell was viciously beaten and called racial slurs by a racist couple staying at the motel where she was working at the front desk. Stonington police allowed this couple to leave the state, but they were apprehended 2 weeks later in New York. Hundreds of people demonstrated weekly, calling for the arrest and trial of the attackers. Caldwell's courage and these events inspired me to create this sculpture to honor the Black Lives Matter movement. The circles in the middle unite to signify a unified whole. That's all he's got.
I have been drawing this fish since I was like this big. And I am so happy to have it becoming larger than life. And also lucky to work with a really great welder and artist in his own right, Andy Reese. So she's called What You See, and I'm still figuring out what I see in her. There's quite a bit to her, you know. And I grew up with nature in Nantucket, and always like watching the repetition and the patterns and the movement of the sea. And just the ocean has always been a mystery to me, and it's just a fabulous feeling of just diving into what you see. Okay, sea creativity, sea compassion, sea contemplation. I'm just spinning on this, but anyway, I just am wondering what you see.
My piece is titled Up Above and Down Below, and the idea is to kind of juxtapose the marine with the terrestrial because they both rely on each other and are so interdependent. A lot of you probably have not snorkeled the cold New England waters, but so I was surprised to learn all about the beautiful coral reefs that are down below. So everything depicted here is either actually in the ocean of New Bedford or Cash's Ledge, which is a beautiful coral reef off the coast of Maine. You can't really see it right now because the sun went down, but all of this is crushed mica that I collected in the sediment in Maine and the New England coast. And then the birds are the northern gannet and the roseate tern. So that was kind of my nod to James Audubon, but the whale and the birds rely on the health of our oceans. So drawing back on the year of sustainability, as we discussed at the very beginning of the tour, it's so important that we keep our ocean waters healthy.
As artists, often we start with 2 dimensions, line drawings, coloring, things like that. And then over time, sometimes things change. Like in my case, I went to 3 dimensions. And as I find I'm designing things, I kind of loosen up a little and things tend to go a little more abstract, as this one did. I find myself a little more influenced by cubism, like thinking in terms of seeing different things from different angles. So I invite you sometime later on to kind of walk around the piece and look at it from different angles, because you see different images of a face. So it's half of this face is representational and half is abstract. And this is all made out of steel. A lot of it is recycled steel. The base is made out of steel that I got at a wrecking yard, and it actually has stamps on it from Bethlehem, USA. So it's like the real thing, made in America. And so that's my piece.
As you've seen on today's show, every year from July to October, you can view new temporary sculptures and murals along New Bedford's waterfront. I'd like to give a special shout out to all the artists who have participated over the years, over 100 now, with a big thank you to founder and curator Jessica Bregoli Sparling. I'm your host, Margot Saulnier, and I'm proud that our team at New Bedford Creative has helped with Seaport Art Walk since 2019. To learn more about us, visit newbedfordcreative.org. Until next time, stay curious and be creative.